Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 13. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and today is really exciting for me because I'm headed to Hawaii. Sorry. In the morning, I am headed to Hawaii, and I am so excited about it, and I'm just not even going to be bashful. I'm not even going to apologize. I'm going to Hawaii, and I am super excited. So a few people have been asking me, is this vacation? Is this work? And I keep saying, well, it's a working vacation. And it occurred to me that that's really not what I should be saying. What's really going on, I am going to Hawaii. And it is a vacation for me in a way, but I am going to join another set of entrepreneurs. They're all females. They own their own businesses, and we have rented a private house. We are going to hang out by the pool. We're going to go to the ocean. We are going to relax and have fun and really tap into our creativity. But yes, we will be working on our businesses, but in a fun and playful way. So it is a working vacation, but I'm not going to be working the same way as if I was, if I was leading a retreat or if I was leading a workshop. So I'm going to call it a vacation. One of my favorite things to do is actually work. So that can be fun. But it occurred to me that most every vacation I have ever taken really has been a working vacation, and most attorneys seem to work while they're on vacation. And I thought, you know what? This is actually a really good topic for us to address. One, should we even be working while we're taking time off? And two, if we want to do that, how do we do that, right? How do we do that without upsetting our partners or our bosses, our clients? And then how do you actually get the work done so that you can leave and leave the work, behind at the office? How do you do all of that? So that's what we're going to cover in today's episode. Number one, should we even be working on vacation? And number two, if we're not going to work on vacation, how do we set it all up so that we can go and truly check out and relax? Let's just start with the default, the cultural norm in the legal industry. And that is that lawyers are going to be available 24/7. I don't know that I've shared this story yet on the podcast, but when I was in law school, on my first day in orientation, they announced when the exams were going to be, and I was not available on the Saturday before Christmas that they had planned it because I was going to be in my best friend's wedding. And so I told the dean of students at the time, and she told me, one, there was no way around it, and two, that this was part of training to become a lawyer, having to cancel very important events because other more legal pressing matters show up. In fact, I took that exam and missed my best friend's wedding. But it really does send this strong message that law is first and foremost. Law comes before your family. Law comes before your friends. Law comes before big events. And it is ingrained in us from such an early age, at the very beginning of our legal careers, that I'm not sure we ever stop to question it. And I don't think this is a big law issue. Now, I didn't really take any vacations where I wasn't working when I was in big law, except for my trip to Tanzania. I shared that in episode 1. But even in the law firm that I was with when I was a young associate, it was a mid-sized firm, they had the exact same issues when it comes to expecting associates to be available while they're out of the office. When I was at that other firm, I never took a vacation. I took long weekends. But even there, when I took a long weekend, something always came up. Without fail, something always came up. And the partners were still reaching out to me, and they expected me to drop everything and not just answer an email or answer a phone call, but to work on a brief or whatever came in. They didn't seem to care that I was trying to take a break. And I'm not saying that they were acting outside of the norm, because I think that's how all law firms operate. It's just expected. So by the time, I was then in big law and took a longer vacation, maybe 4 days, 5 days, I still took my laptop with me because I just knew that I had to work, and my phone was available. So if people needed to call or text, it just didn't occur to me that I could truly check out, that was an option. And I don't think that I created that in my own head, because I certainly remember when other associates were going on vacation and maybe they weren't as much of a people pleaser as me. And so they wanted to go and check out, and they were going to another country. And the partners that they were working with would say, well, you can go as long as you're available. I assume you're going to buy. This was back when cell phone data wasn't as available. You're going to have to buy the package to be available while you're, in Europe. And it was always disappointing and frustrating to hear that, because the message that was being given was that vacation is not important, and your resting and relaxing and having time off is not important. The work always, always, always must come first, and your well-being and your happiness does not matter. Now, that may sound a bit harsh, but that is the message. And we have to keep in mind that whether you intend for a message to be conveyed or not, it is. And to me, that's the message that was sent. So I was always on call. I was always available. There were definitely times when I would cancel a trip, especially if it was a long weekend as opposed to a longer vacation. I didn't take too many of those. But if a client had something really important, or, a case was unexpected, but, it was, firing up, not generally for trial. I can't even remember the circumstances, but there were times when the law firm or the client would basically pay for me to cancel my vacation. And they took care of the financial piece, but the person that really paid for that was me, because I wasn't getting my time off, right? You can't really just reschedule that. There's always going to be something that gets in the way. So I definitely canceled trips, and, I was pretty bad. There was one trip that we took to New York with some friends, and I was so annoying. They were all out having a good time. And basically we had to keep working around my schedule of, well, I need to do this phone call, or, I have to be on the phone with this client. And so they basically went out, had a good time. And I ended up working most of the time in the hotel room. And one morning, I remember going to bed the night before, and I told my husband, I was like, hey, I've got to do a deposition in the morning. It's going to be by phone, so you'll probably sleep through it. But if you wake up, be really quiet. I mean, looking back, I can see how crazy that sounds. But when I was in that moment, it seemed perfectly reasonable. So my guess is that some of you may be judging me, and some of you may be like, what's wrong with that? So look, I've been there. I've been there where I work on every vacation. I get it. But it took a toll on me. And, I share in episode 1 my story about when I took a vacation to Tanzania. It was 10 days, and it was the first time I had ever taken a vacation in my entire legal career where I did not have my phone. Now, we were in the Serengeti. So, there was no electricity. There were no waters. Everything was running off of a generator or water that had been brought in. But some of them still managed to have some Wi-Fi, and I refused to connect. Luckily, by the time I got to a place that Wi-Fi was available, I had been checked out enough that I was like, no, I need to stay checked out. But those first few days, it was really, really hard for me. It was a bit of a detox to not be able to check in with my work. And here was the interesting part of that. So, when we are always expected to be on call, and in fact, we get a million emails and phone calls as well while we're away, as associates, we start to think over time that we are irreplaceable, that the office just cannot run without us. And in some ways, that is empowering and it strokes our ego. So by the time that, we are far enough along in our careers where we have more flexibility and control over our schedules, when you become a partner, you still think that you're irreplaceable and that you are needed and that you could not possibly go on vacation without your entire team needing access to you. So when I was going to Tanzania, we had been told that there probably would not be any Wi-Fi. And if it existed, it would be super spotty. So go ahead and tell, all of your work colleagues, family, that you're probably not going to have access. And that sent me into panic attacks. I mean, I would get so stressed out and anxious just thinking about what was going to happen when I went to Africa. I was waking up in the middle of the night. I had convinced myself that I would lose clients, that some emergency would come up and there wouldn't be someone there to handle it, or someone was going to call and ask for information or something with a case. I was just convinced that the work could not be done without me. Luckily, there was an attorney in the office. He kept asking me about my trip, and he saw how distraught I was over the concept of leaving without, having access. And he told me that one of the best things that he had done, not only for his well-being and his marriage, but his career, was to at least once a year check out for 2 weeks. And what he learned was that when you check out for 2 weeks, you actually realize how amazing your team is and how much support you have and how much your clients love you. He's the one that taught me to really allow others to shine. And by constantly thinking that you have to be involved, that you have to be there to answer their questions, you're basically telling them the message you're sending them is that they're not capable and you don't trust them. And that was a great lesson for me. He really helped me prepare so that when I went to Tanzania, I was okay. I mean, I was still gripping, right? I was still nervous, but I had mostly released that. And as it turns out, he was right. Everything was fine. My assistant had access to my email. Anytime someone reached out and asked a question, she let them know that I was out of town, but she helped them, or she got them to someone that could help them. We had set up my out-of-office email so that it would go to a message that said, hey, I'm out of the country. I have no access to email, but if you need someone, here's both my assistant's contact and here's an associate that can be your point of contact if you need to reach out to an attorney. I also prepared a super detailed, probably more detailed than it needed to be, case log of every single case I had going on. And I already did this from a project management standpoint, but I got even more detailed as to what are some issues coming up, who might be calling, what they might need to know, who would be the person to direct them to. It was completely out of control. You hear about helicopter parents. In that moment, I was being a helicopter partner. I didn't trust anyone to do anything. So I had crazy instructions and it was all handled. And in fact, I had people calling in for new work, brand new clients. I mean, I knew them, but they had not been a client before. And my associate, she did a fabulous job. She processed it all. She made them feel wonderful. She closed the deal, got the work in the door, ran the conflicts, opened the matter, and started working on it. And by the time I got back, she was like, here's the new lawsuit that I helped bring in for you, and here's where we are on it. And I was so relieved to know that I had such a supportive team there helping me. And that attorney that hired us, he even called and said, I don't know what you've got going on in your office, but your team is amazing. I can't even imagine my assistant and associate being able to bring in a matter like that so seamlessly. And the thing is, My instructions didn't accomplish anything in that regard. That was just them doing their thing. When you let people support you and, be their best selves, they will be. They will be. So that kind of goes into the second part of today's topic. And that is, okay, so if you're going to try to check out, and I strongly encourage that you do, how do you go about doing it? And in fact, before I get there, let me just say this. No one will respect your time if you don't. Now, I was really trying to be a superstar law student and associate, and so of course I didn't feel comfortable pushing back when the school or my partners were disrespecting my boundaries, my well-being, my time off. But as soon as I let them run all over me and I didn't push back, I did set the stage. I set the standard that they were in control of my off time, that they were in control of 24/7, and that as long as they pushed, I would cave, right? So I do think it's important if you are an associate or someone that is not necessarily in charge of your schedule, that even though you want to be a rock star, you want to climb that ladder, you still don't have to completely sacrifice your boundaries and your time. There is a way to go about that. That's probably another episode. But even if you have control and you're a partner and you're not setting up those boundaries with clients and other partners, people are going to always take advantage of you. And I don't think that they do it in order to take advantage of you. It's just that they're busy too. And this is the cultural norm. And so they just assume, especially if you've been doing it for a long time, they just assume that you're going to always be available to them. And so it's up to you to change that standard. I'll tell you another quick story. I was in Florida. I was at Amelia Island with my mother and my stepfather and my husband. She actually was already going to be down there and invited us to come down because I had just canceled a previous vacation for a client. And she said, just come on down. We're already going to be here. It'll be a quick trip, but come. So I was like, okay. While I'm there, I get an email from someone very important in our firm, and he asked if he could have a call with me the next day. And I said, well, I'm actually on vacation. I'll be back in the office on whatever day. Can we talk then? And he said, well, it'll just take a few minutes. And I was like, okay, this must be important. So, I leave the pool, go back to the condo to do this phone call. It was completely unimportant. I mean, it totally could have waited. And I missed out on having a fruity drink that morning because I thought it might be important and that I should not be drinking before the call, when it turns out I could have completely relaxed and had my umbrella in my fruity drink, at 2:00 in the afternoon. But it reminds me too of, there's a story that Michael Hyatt tells in his book, Living Forward. And that's when he was the CEO of Nelson Publishers and was always available. And his doctor, he kept going in for what he thought was a heart attack. It was a panic attack. But his doctor said, you've got to take some time off. So he had scheduled this, told everyone on the team, and he was in, I think, Dallas on a layover when he got, I think it was an email from, I think, the chairman of the board saying, we need to come to Nashville to have an all hands meeting. And in that moment, he was like, well, I got to go back. And his wife was like, I'll support you in whatever you do, but you have to take control of your time off and your health. And so he ended up knowing that he might lose his job. And he says it was like the biggest decision he ever made. He felt terrible. He felt so much guilt and really was scared. He sent an email saying, it's really important that I go on this vacation. I'm going to, but I will make sure my team is there to host you. Otherwise, wait until I get back. It'll be a week. Turns out they did come. He did not get fired. And his team in Nashville basically told him when he got back, that was completely unimportant. I don't even know why they flew to Nashville. They certainly didn't need to be here. We could have done it on a phone call, and you certainly didn't need to come back. So I just say this to show, even when people say there are emergencies, even when people say they have to have you back, right? You have to cancel your vacation. You have to get on the phone call because it's super important. It may not be. It could just be that they're so used to people always being available that they're not used to hearing no. And it's up to you to stand your ground, even when it's scary, even when it causes you to have a panic attack, to say, no, I'm going to take care of myself. And look, vacations are taking care of yourself. There's plenty of research out there that shows if you never take time off, if you don't reset, if you don't recenter, one, mentally, emotionally, your well-being is just not where it could be. You're going to suffer depression more likely, burnout, frustration in your job. You're not going to be as effective or productive. And the other thing about getting away, from your work is it allows you to be creative again, to really tap into the outside world. Sometimes we get in our bubble and we forget that there's this whole other world out there, and it gives us ideas. So when we come back, we're actually better employees. So I do encourage you to go on vacation, and I do encourage you to check out when you can. That said, I am a realist and I am getting ready to go to Hawaii, and I have so much to do and not enough time to get it done. So what do you do in that situation? Look, I don't have this all figured out. I'm going to share my thoughts with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. It's why at the end, I always say, head on over to the podcast website, because I do want this to be a discussion. When I'm recording these podcasts, I'm just talking to you. I'm in a room by myself. Well, my dogs Parker and Jackson are here, but that doesn't really count. No one is talking back to me, but I'm interested in your opinions. I'm interested in your thoughts. So if you've got some hacks that work for you, please head over to the podcast. Today will be hustleandflowpodcast.com/13 and leave a comment. Let everyone know what works for you. I certainly would appreciate it. But here's what I'm doing. Okay, so I first start with what is the biggest priorities for me, right? So if I know I'm leaving out of town, especially if it's for vacation, not a work trip, I try to look at, okay, what are my biggest priorities that have to get done before I can leave? And if you're not familiar with how you determine priorities, go back to episode number 3. It's how to take back your day, but it talks about the priority matrix. So go back to that if you're not familiar with it. You can never get everything done. Even if you plan ahead, things are going to come in that you hadn't planned for. So just know, first and foremost, you can never, ever, ever get everything done. Well, maybe you can, but I can't. I have never experienced that. So there's always going to be some trepidation and nervousness about leaving, because there will be work that's still sitting on your desk that needs to be completed. But so the first thing to do is say, okay, what are my priorities? What really needs to get done? And oftentimes that means, well, is there a deadline? And that doesn't mean you immediately do it, because a lot of deadlines can be postponed or pushed off. And so the first thing you want to do is say, okay, what can be postponed or pushed off? And then delegate that task to someone else if possible, and see if they can't get that accomplished. Or you can reach out yourself if you're a solo and you don't have much support. Just reach out and say, can we push this back? And if the answer is yes, great. If not, that's a priority. So you get your priorities together, and then you focus on those first. And you keep a good long running list so that you can keep good mental space, which means that you're not constantly worried about what are you forgetting, so that when you get back into the office, you've still got that list, so that when you're away, you've again got more ability to check out, because you're not worried that something's not getting done. That list is going to be there as soon as you get back. And then if the projects that have deadlines are finished, then you want to move to what is most important to you, right? What's most important to you. For me, it's customer service. So I did a few things this week and last week that probably most people, if they were doing the priority matrix, wouldn't put in the important category. But because the cornerstone of my business, the very foundation, is impeccable customer service by choice, that has to go in that important priority. So for example, I'm leading a mastermind at a law firm, and we had an in-person meeting earlier in April, and we were talking about what our next group session was going to be like. And I said, okay, I'm going to cover this and then we'll do hot seats. And I had a request that I basically cover the teaching materials in a video or something else so that we could dedicate all of the time for hot seats. And I was happy to do that, right? That's a value add. It's not in the contract. It doesn't have to be done, but I told them I would do it. So that had to come first. I couldn't push that off any longer. If someone was looking at that priority matrix for me, they would probably say, well, that doesn't have to get done. It did for me because I made that promise to them. And because customer service is important to me and it's important to my business, that was one of the first projects that I said, this has to get done. And it took a long time to do it, but I got it done. Another is I send out handwritten thank you cards and gifts to people that sign up for my retreats. And I'm sure you've heard me talking on the podcast. The Life and Law and Balance Summer Retreat is coming up at Miraval in June. And so as people are signing up, I'm sending out those gifts. Now, could that wait another week? Yeah. I mean, most people would look at that matrix and say, that's not that important, but it is to me. It is to my business. And so you have to always keep that filter on when you're looking at the matrix. What is important to you? What is important to your business? What is important to your mission? That can impact whether or not you should do it because it really keeps you in alignment and it allows you to come from a place of integrity when you do check out. And then where can you delegate? If you have a team, where can you delegate? Even if you wouldn't normally give that to someone, maybe try it out. Maybe give it to them and they can either try to take care of it or get you a draft by the time you get back. Let them shine. Let them do their thing. Now, if you have an assistant, especially a good assistant, one that you can trust, you can have her or him check your emails for you. If you don't have that availability, or you really just don't feel like you can give your password over to or access over to your assistant, here's what I'm doing while I'm out. I have my out of office on and it says, so some people they don't want to say they're on vacation as if that's a bad thing. I think you should say you're on vacation because it indicates to some people that will respect your time, not everyone will, that you're out, maybe with your family or doing something else. And so they're less likely to bother you. So you say, I'm out on vacation. Here's when I will respond. Ideally, you will then give them a contact that they can use if they have, an immediate need. If you're in a large law firm, no problem. If you're a solo, you might need to, if you don't have support, you might need to find another attorney or someone else that can help you out just to answer emails or help any clients in an emergency. Or, and this is what I'm doing because right now I don't have support, I'm in the process of hiring an assistant, and if you know of anyone that's great, it will be a virtual position. Feel free to send them my way. I'm working on that now. But right now I don't have that. But as I just said, I have this retreat going on. So what I'm doing in my out of office email, I'm saying, 1, I'm out, but 2, I say, if you're emailing me about the Life and Law and Balance retreat and you have questions, reply to this email, right? Reply to the out of office email and put in the subject line in all caps, retreat. So while I'm in Hawaii, I will look at my email, but not to stay on top of it. By the way, that is a fallacy. For people that say they're staying on top of it, that's only going to stress you out. I guarantee you're going to see an email that stresses you out. So don't do that. I'm not going to be checking my emails except to sort and look for emails that say retreat in all caps. Those are the only ones I will look at. So you could do something like that as well with your clients that says, ask them to reply with emergency. Now, again, some people will think it's an emergency when it's not. But if you don't have any support, that is an option, and it's still better than you constantly checking your email and responding to everyone that comes in. So you're just setting expectations. And then if you absolutely have to work, I do. I've got deadlines that still have to be met that cannot be pushed off. What do? Do you pull an all-nighter? Do you keep working? What do you do? Well, so what I'm doing is I'm putting bookends on it. And that means that I'm giving myself, it's a long flight to Hawaii. So I'm buying the Wi-Fi access and I have 2 really long legs. And within that time, I can do as much work as I want on my laptop. I can send everything in, email people. And then when I land in Hawaii, it's got to stop. And that's up to me. I'm the one that has to say it's going to stop. And so if I'm pushing up against a deadline and something isn't quite ready, I just have to turn it in and say, this isn't quite ready, right? So you have to be honest. But if you give yourself some time and, maybe you're going and that there are times where maybe there's an activity you're not interested in that your family's doing, you can set it aside there, but try not to make that a habit. Only do it if you absolutely have to. And maybe don't tell other people that you're doing it. It's just for yourself. Then after that, you just have to walk away. It will never feel comfortable. It will always feel scary. You're always going to think that you're missing something or you've forgotten something. At least I do. I don't know. Maybe some of you don't actually feel that way. But oh my gosh, it is always stressful for me to leave town because I'm always thinking about all of the things that I didn't get done. But guess what? You are replaceable. We are all replaceable. And as much as we want to be great attorneys, great professionals, and be of service to others, we can only truly be of service to others if we take care of ourselves. So I encourage you to take time off, to check out when you can, and to put systems in place so that when you do leave, it feels a little more comfortable, even if not 100%. So that's it for me today. I am headed to Hawaii. And by the time this podcast comes out, I'll actually probably be landing in Nashville. I'm on the red eye. But I hope this has been helpful. It's an important topic. Head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com/13 and leave a comment. Let me know what works for you. Let me know your thoughts on working vacations. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to connecting next week. Bye. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.